Nobody saw this coming. Not the fans, not the industry, nobody. One viral moment, one line crossed, and suddenly, a private meeting is being called with names that don't sit in the same room unless something serious is about to happen. No tweets, no interviews, just silence and pressure building behind the scenes. Because when the biggest voices in hip-hop stop talking publicly and start moving privately, it's not drama anymore. It's consequences. Nobody expected Jay-Z to step into this situation. Not the fans, not the blogs, not even the people closest to him. Because Jay-Z is not the type to react emotionally. He doesn't jump into online chaos. He doesn't respond to internet drama. And he definitely doesn't involve himself in public feuds that don't directly threaten the foundation of hip-hop itself. But this time, something crossed a line he couldn't ignore. And when he finally responded, it wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It wasn't even meant to be seen. But somehow the message got out. And now the entire hip-hop world is frozen, trying to understand one question. What exactly did Jay-Z just do, and what happens next? It all started with a viral moment that spiraled out of control. King Harris, T's son, posted a live stream that many people initially brushed off as typical internet arrogance. Loud words, aggressive tone, a young rapper trying to assert himself in a world built on attention. But then came the moment that changed everything. A comment directed at 50 Cent's late mother. Not a joke about music. Not industry talk. A personal, deeply sensitive reference to something that has always been untouchable in 50 Cent's world. And in hip-hop, there are lines you don't test. Family is one. And mothers, especially deceased mothers, are sacred ground. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Clips spread everywhere. Reactions poured in. People couldn't believe what they had just heard. And then came the response everyone expected. 50 Cent. Sharp, immediate. Controlled anger disguised as humor, but anyone who knows him understands. This wasn't something he would ever forget. But what nobody expected was what came next. Because somewhere behind the scenes, far away from social media, another figure had already seen everything. Jay-Z. He didn't post. He didn't comment. He didn't tweet a single word. But he watched. And then, according to multiple industry insiders, he made a decision that instantly shifted the energy of the entire situation. A direct message was sent. Not through interviews. Not through public statements. Through channels only people at that level understand. And the content of that message was described as cold, precise, and final. Not a threat. Not a warning. A boundary being drawn. Because Jay-Z doesn't enter chaos to escalate it. He enters to end it. And this time, the message wasn't aimed at King Harris. It wasn't even aimed at 50 Cent. It was aimed at T. That detail alone changed everything. Because it meant this was no longer about a viral clip. It was about responsibility, authority, and control. Behind the scenes, the industry immediately shifted into silence mode. People who normally talk freely stopped posting. Associates went quiet. Even blogs hesitated, unsure of what was actually happening versus what was being leaked for attention. Because when Jay-Z moves like this, it usually means one thing. Something bigger is at stake than what the public can see. To understand why this hits so hard, you have to understand the unspoken structure of hip-hop. There are rappers, there are moguls, and then there are architects. People who don't just participate in the culture, they shape it. Jay-Z is one of them. So is 50 Cent. Different styles, different paths, but both built from survival, loss, and discipline. And both understand something most younger voices don't. Certain lines permanently change how you are seen. The situation with King Harris wasn't just internet talk anymore. It had crossed into territory where reputation, respect, and legacy intersect. And that's where Jay-Z draws his line. Because from his perspective, the problem wasn't just what was said. It was what was allowed. Reports suggest Jay-Z waited before reacting. He didn't rush. He observed. He gave time for T to step in, correct the situation, or publicly distance himself from the comments. But nothing came. No apology. No clarification. No internal control shown publicly. Just silence. And that silence was interpreted in a very specific way. Not as peace, but as absence of leadership. That's what reportedly triggered Jay-Z's involvement. Because in his world, silence in moments like this doesn't resolve problems. It expands them, and expands them into something uncontrollable. Privately, sources claim Jay-Z has always held a level of respect for 50 Cent that the public rarely sees. Not friendship, not alliance, but mutual understanding. Both men came from environments where loss wasn't abstract, it was personal. Both men built empires from pain. And both men understand exactly what it means when that pain is disrespected. That's why this situation wasn't just another feud to Jay-Z. It was a breach of culture. And breaches require correction. Not conversation. Correction. After the message was delivered, things reportedly went quiet at an even deeper level. T's camp stopped responding to inquiries. People around him became unreachable. And King Harris himself went silent online, deleting and adjusting posts without explanation. Not confirmation, not denial, just disappearance. And that silence only made the situation feel heavier. Because in hip-hop, silence often means preparation. Preparation for what comes next. Meanwhile, inside industry circles, speculation grew rapidly. Was Jay-Z protecting 50 Cent? Was he protecting the culture? Or was he protecting the idea that certain boundaries must never be crossed, no matter who says what online? Different people had different interpretations. But one thing everyone agreed on. When Jay-Z sends a message like this, it's never random. It always connects to something deeper, something structural, something long-term. And now attention shifted to T. Because in Jay-Z's reported message, the focus wasn't just the incident. It was control, responsibility, and leadership within his own household. That's what made it personal. That's what made it serious. And that's what made it dangerous. Because when figures at this level stop speaking publicly and start communicating privately, it usually means decisions are being made that the public will only understand later. For now, all anyone has is fragments. A viral clip, a reaction from 50 Cent, a silent response from Jay-Z, and a rapidly escalating atmosphere that no one seems able to slow down. What makes this even more intense is the timing. Hip-hop is already in a sensitive state. Generational shifts, online amplification, and constant visibility mean small moments become massive in hours. And this didn't stay small. It became symbolic. Respect versus disrespect. Control versus chaos. Legacy versus impulse. And now, all eyes are on what happens next. Will T respond publicly? Will King Harris address it again? Will 50 Cent escalate or stay silent? And most importantly, what exactly was in Jay-Z's message that caused such immediate silence from multiple camps? Because insiders keep repeating the same phrase. He didn't argue, he ended the conversation. And in this industry, When someone like Jay-Z ends a conversation, it rarely stays private for long. Something is already moving behind the scenes. And when it surfaces, the entire tone of hip-hop may shift again. For now, the world is waiting, watching, and trying to decode a silence that feels louder than any diss track ever could. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't go on social media. He didn't even address the public. But the message Jay-Z sent through the industry was enough to freeze every conversation in hip-hop. Fix your house before someone else does. 8 words. That's all it took. No hashtags, no interviews, no explanation. Just a sentence delivered through trusted channels, carried quietly into the wrong room at the right time. And the moment T heard it, according to insiders, the atmosphere around him changed instantly. Because Jay-Z doesn't speak like an artist in moments like this. He speaks like someone adjusting the temperature of the entire culture. And when he speaks like that, it doesn't feel like advice. It feels like a decision has already been made. At first, T reportedly didn't even react publicly. No statement, no denial, no explanation. Just silence. But inside his camp, that silence turned into chaos. Multiple emergency discussions were allegedly held within hours, one with management, one with PR, one with close advisors trying to figure out a response that wouldn't escalate things further. Because everyone understood one thing very clearly. This wasn't just about a viral clip anymore. This was about Jay-Z. And when Jay-Z enters a situation, the rules change immediately. The pressure didn't come from 50 Cent this time. It didn't come from fans. It didn't even come from blogs. It came from the top of the culture itself. And that's what made it dangerous. Because Jay-Z doesn't involve himself in noise. He involves himself in structure, in boundaries, in control. And according to multiple whispers moving through the industry, his message wasn't just about King Harris comments. It was about leadership, responsibility, and what happens when someone in control stops controlling their own environment. That's where things started shifting in a way nobody expected. Because behind the scenes, another narrative was already forming. One that complicated everything. One that made this less about a teenager's viral moment and more about legacy pressure building across multiple generations. Sources claim Jay-Z didn't act immediately. He waited. He observed. He gave space for T to handle it internally, to step in as a father, to correct the situation before it became something bigger. But nothing came. No public correction. No apology. No clear boundary set. Just silence. And that silence was interpreted differently by different people. To some, it was avoidance. To others, it was hesitation. But to Jay-Z, according to insiders, it was something more serious. Lack of control. And in his world, lack of control spreads fast. That's when the private message reportedly came through. Not directly from Jay-Z, but through someone both camps trusted. A neutral figure, someone respected enough to carry weight without distorting meaning. And when they delivered the message, they didn't soften it. They repeated it exactly as it was given. Fix your house before someone else does. No extra context. No clarification. Just that. And in that moment, T reportedly understood the tone behind it more than the words themselves. Because in hip-hop, words can be layered. But tone tells the truth. And this tone wasn't casual. It wasn't conversational. It was final. But while T was still processing that pressure, something else was happening in the background that escalated everything further. 50 Cent had already reacted publicly in his own way. Sharp, controlled, humorous on the surface, but everyone who knows him understood the subtext. He didn't let things slide. He never does. And then came the part that shocked insiders even more. According to circulating claims, Jay-Z didn't oppose 50 Cent's response. In fact, behind closed doors, there was a quiet understanding that the situation had already crossed a cultural boundary. Not a legal one, not a business one, a cultural one. And that changed how everyone moved. Because once that kind of boundary is crossed, it stops being about individuals. It becomes about example. Then a leak surfaced. A short audio clip, allegedly recorded inside T's environment shortly after the message was delivered. Faint, distorted, almost unusable. But one line stood out clearly. "He ain't gonna talk to me like I'm a child." The internet immediately exploded. Some believed it was T speaking about Jay-Z. Others thought it was directed at the situation itself. But the timing made everything worse. Because right after that line, background noise escalated. A door slam, raised voices, and King Harris reportedly reacting in real time. That detail changed the entire perception of what was happening inside that space. Because now it wasn't just external pressure. It was internal conflict. A father and son caught in a situation neither fully controlled. And the deeper it went, the more unstable it became. According to insiders, T confronted King directly after the situation escalated. Not calmly, not as a discussion, but as pressure meeting consequences. Because now it wasn't just about words online. It was about industry attention, reputation, and consequences that reach far beyond the internet. One source described it like this: T wasn't reacting to disrespect. He was reacting to visibility. Everyone was watching now. And that visibility changes everything. Because once the culture is watching, private problems stop being private. During the confrontation, King reportedly refused to back down. He stood on his words, claimed he was speaking freely, claimed he wasn't afraid of backlash, and at one point, allegedly said something that made the situation even heavier. 50 started it, I just finished it. That line reportedly shifted everything in the room, because it confirmed something deeper. This wasn't just impulsive behavior. It was perception of participation in a larger conflict. Whether accurate or not, it changed how people began interpreting the situation. But the real shock came from another leak. A message screenshot circulating from someone allegedly inside T's circle. Short, direct, anxious. Jay didn't call to talk. Jay called to warn, we need to move carefully. And beneath it, replies that revealed rising panic. Tip has to address this. King made it worse. 50 is watching everything now. At that point, it stopped feeling like entertainment. It started feeling like pressure building inside a closed system. Then came the twist that flipped everything again. A source close to another major label allegedly claimed something unexpected. Jay didn't send that message for 50, he sent it for King. That claim changed the entire narrative instantly. Because it suggested Jay-Z wasn't stepping in as a rival or supporter of sides. He was stepping in as a cultural authority. And if that was true, then King wasn't being treated as a celebrity's son. He was being treated as an individual responsible for his own actions. Not protected by age, not shielded by status, held accountable by principle. That idea alone sent shockwaves through the industry. Because it meant the message wasn't about beef. It wasn't about alliances. It was about rules. And rule, as in hip-hop, are older than fame itself. A separate alleged quote from Jay-Z began circulating soon after. I don't care who your father is. If you talk about a man's mother like that, you answer for it. Whether the quote was exact or not, the reaction it triggered was real. Because it reinforced something the culture has always understood, but rarely enforces publicly. Some lines are permanent, and once crossed, they don't disappear. They echo. At this point, the narrative split into two interpretations. One side believed this was a disciplinary moment, a correction, a reminder from the top that respect still matters. The other side believed something bigger was forming behind the scenes, that this wasn't about one incident at all, but about control of narrative, influence, and the direction of the next generation of hip-hop behavior. Then came the most unsettling part, a final alleged warning attributed to Jay-Z through insiders. If he won't discipline him, someone else will. That single line changed the tone completely, because it introduced consequence. Not emotional consequence, structural consequence. And that's what made the industry uneasy. Because when structure is invoked at that level, it doesn't stay private for long. It spreads. And when it spreads, it reshapes everything around it. Now the entire culture is watching. Not for a response, but for what happens when silence finally breaks. Because in situations like this, silence isn't empty. It's preparation. And everyone knows it. The moment that clip went live, the entire tone of hip-hop shifted. Not gradually, not subtly. Instantly. Because 50 Cent wasn't joking. He wasn't trolling. He wasn't playing to the camera like he usually does. He looked directly into the lens, completely still, completely serious, and said, "The kid don't know what he started, but his father knows." And that line changed everything. Because in hip-hop, 50 Cent doesn't speak like that unless something has already escalated behind the scenes. No humor, no sarcasm, no mask. Just a warning disguised as a statement. Within minutes, the video spread everywhere. Fans paused the clip, replayed it, slowed it down, tried to read between the silence in his expression. And the conclusion was the same everywhere. This was no longer internet drama. This was now something structured, something unfolding in real time, something with consequences. And right after that moment, everything around King Harris T and the wider industry began tightening like a pressure system before a storm. Because 50 Cent's words weren't isolated. They aligned with something else that had already started moving quietly in the background. Jay-Z, the man who never reacts publicly, the man who rarely acknowledges chaos unless it threatens the foundation of the culture itself. According to multiple industry whispers, Jay-Z had already delivered a second message behind closed doors. Not through interviews, not through statements, not through public pressure, through influence. And influence in his world doesn't look loud. It looks like doors closing quietly, deals slowing down, phone calls not returned, opportunities suddenly under review. That's how the second phase allegedly began. Not with confrontation, with recalibration. And while the public was still reacting to King Harris, live stream comments, something far more serious was already happening behind the curtain. One by one, people connected to the situation started feeling pressure. Not direct, not visible, but unmistakable. A paused collaboration here, a delayed endorsement there, a scheduled meeting suddenly rescheduled indefinitely. No explanations, no announcements, just silence where momentum used to be. And that silence carried weight, because everyone in the industry understands one thing. When major figures stop moving forward, it usually isn't accidental. It's intentional. Back inside the core of the situation, T was now caught in a position he hadn't publicly acknowledged, but was clearly dealing with privately. According to insiders, he wasn't just reacting to his son anymore. He was reacting to the scale of attention surrounding his son. Because this wasn't a private family issue anymore. It was now a cultural signal. And Jay-Z's involvement, whether direct or indirect, turned it into something much bigger than a viral clip. It became a test of leadership, a test of discipline, a test of control, and most importantly, a test of respect within a system that rarely forgives public missteps involving the dead. That's where things started breaking apart internally. Because King Harris, instead of stepping back, reportedly doubled down again online. Not with apology, not with clarification, but with defiance. And defiance in situations like this doesn't cool pressure. It accelerates it. And that's when the second wave hit. A leaked audio clip surfaced. Low quality, fragmented, clearly recorded under unstable conditions. But one section was clear enough to send shockwaves across social media. A voice, allegedly T, frustrated and overwhelmed, saying, "He don't understand what type of people he's playing with." The clip ended abruptly, but it was enough, because people didn't hear just frustration. They heard realization. Realization that the situation had moved beyond control. At the same time, another layer began forming in the background. Reports started circulating that Jay-Z's second message wasn't just verbal or symbolic. It was structural, meaning it didn't just travel through words. It traveled through systems, business channels, industry connections, decision makers. And suddenly, people began noticing something unusual. Projects tied to T's wider circle were being reviewed. Collaborations were being paused. Nothing officially canceled, but nothing moving forward either. And that distinction mattered. Because in entertainment, slowing something down is often more effective than stopping it entirely. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates pressure. Meanwhile, King Harris went live again. And this time, the internet didn't just watch. It waited for something to go wrong. And it did. He saw a comment referencing Jay-Z's name. And instead of ignoring it, instead of backing away, he responded directly. "Man, Jay-Z don't run nothing over here. Y'all scared of names." There was a pause after he said it. A split second, where even he seemed to realize what had just left his mouth. Because in that moment, he didn't just challenge an individual. He challenged a position, a level, a structure. And in this industry, structure responds differently than individuals. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. But what came next wasn't public reaction. It was private movement. And that's where things got darker. A leaked internal conversation between unnamed executives surfaced shortly after. Distorted audio, heavy background noise. But the message was unmistakable. Jay is not reacting emotionally, he's containing it. Another voice responded. "If this continues, it stops being entertainment." And then the line that changed everything. "He's not trying to escalate it. He's trying to prevent escalation outside the industry." That sentence reframed everything. Because it suggested the pressure wasn't coming from ego. It was coming from risk management. Not protecting reputations, protecting stability. And stability, in this context, didn't mean fame. It meant control over what happens when public disrespect crosses into real-world consequences. At that point, another anonymous post surfaced claiming something even more serious. Jay-Z's second message wasn't just about King or T. It was about preventing external retaliation. not industry retaliation. External, meaning people outside the music world who don't care about narratives, explanations, or context. People who respond only to disrespect. That idea shifted the entire tone of the conversation online. Because suddenly, fans weren't debating music anymore. They were debating consequences. And that's when the fear set in. Not fear of celebrities, fear of escalation. Because once situations move beyond entertainment circles, control becomes unpredictable. At the same time, 50 Cent posted another short clip. No humor, no captions, just him sitting still for a few seconds before saying, "This ain't even about me anymore." And then the video ended. That statement added another layer of confusion. Because if it wasn't about him, then what exactly was it about? Respect, legacy, control, or something deeper, unfolding behind the scenes that nobody fully understood yet. Back in industry circles, insiders began repeating the same phrase. This is bigger than a feud. And that's when attention shifted fully back to Jay-Z. Because the second message he allegedly sent was now the center of speculation. Not because of what was said, but because of what it triggered. Paused deals, quiet meetings, unanswered calls, and a growing sense that something irreversible was being avoided in real time. Then came the most unsettling detail yet. A source claimed that Jay-Z's message wasn't just about correction. It was about timing, meaning he wasn't reacting to what had already happened. He was reacting to what could happen next. And that's why the pressure intensified so quickly. Because prevention in these situations always looks like control from the outside. But inside, it looks like containment. And containment only happens when something is considered volatile. Now the entire narrative sits at a breaking point. On one side, King Harris still standing on his words. On the other, T caught between responsibility and chaos. And above it all, figures like Jay-Z and 50 Cent moving in silence, but influencing everything without needing to speak publicly again. And the question the entire industry is now asking is simple. Was this ever about one comment, or was that just the spark that revealed something already waiting to ignite? Because right now, nothing feels finished. It feels paused. And in hip-hop, paused situations rarely stay paused for long. The internet had seen a lot of chaos before, but nothing like this. Not between artists of this level, not with this many legends involved, and definitely not with a teenager at the center of a storm that suddenly felt way bigger than rap itself. Because once the leaked email surfaced, the one mentioning a private meeting between Jay-Z, 50 Cent, and T.I., everything stopped being online drama and started feeling like something closer to a cultural intervention. At first, people thought it was fake, another edited screenshot, another fan-made story designed to go viral, but then more confirmation started trickling in from different corners of the industry, different insiders, different camps, same message. A meeting was being arranged. And not just any meeting. Jay-Z wanted King Harris there. That detail alone flipped the entire internet upside down. Fans couldn't process it. Why would one of the most powerful men in music want a teenager in the same room as two of the most influential rappers of the last 2 decades? That wasn't normal industry business. That was something else entirely. Within minutes, social media turned into a live courtroom. Everyone had an opinion, everyone had a theory, and nobody agreed on anything. Some said Jay-Z was trying to protect King from himself. Others said it was discipline. A few believed it was a warning wrapped in diplomacy. But one thing everyone agreed on was simple. When Jay-Z moves quietly, it's never random. Meanwhile, reactions from other artists started pouring in. not in support of drama, but in recognition of weight. A veteran West Coast rapper summed it up in one line. There are rules in this game, some lines you don't cross, ever. Another industry OG added, when the elders call a meeting, you don't debate it, you show up. Even artists who usually avoid controversy started speaking out, carefully choosing words like respect, boundaries, and culture. Because deep down, everyone understood what this moment represented. It wasn't just about one comment anymore. It was about what happens when the new generation forgets there are still rules in place. Then things escalated again. A leaked PR message from inside T.I.'s camp revealed panic behind the scenes. Not panic about conflict, but panic about scale. We were not prepared for Jay-Z requesting King's presence, the message read. Tip is furious and stressed. That combination of words, furious and stressed, told people everything they needed to know. T.I. wasn't dealing with a normal situation anymore. He was dealing with pressure from a level that didn't usually get involved in personal family issues. And then came the moment that shocked everyone. 50 Cent himself reacted. No entourage. No live streams. No public access. Just 4 names. Jay-Z, 50 Cent, T.I., and King Harris. One room. One conversation. One outcome, and the entire culture holding its breath waiting to see what breaks first, pride, silence, or control. But behind the scenes, something even more intense was unfolding. A private phone call reportedly took place between Jay-Z and someone extremely close to T.I. The contents were never confirmed publicly, but the reaction on the receiving end was described in one word by insiders. Shock. Not anger. Not disagreement. Shock. Because whatever was said, it wasn't casual. It wasn't advisory. It wasn't even negotiable. It felt final. And that's when a new angle entered the story, one nobody was ready for. A trusted entertainment reporter dropped a claim that changed the entire direction of the situation. Jay-Z didn't request the meeting for punishment. He requested it for protection. At first, people didn't believe it. It didn't fit the narrative. It didn't match the tension. It didn't explain the severity. But then the explanation followed, and it made things worse, not better. According to insiders, Jay-Z had received information that the situation had attracted attention outside of the entertainment world. Not media. Not executives. Not brand partners. Something else. People who don't operate through public statements or social media responses. People who respond to disrespect in ways that don't involve interviews or explanations. And once that detail leaked, the tone of everything changed. Suddenly, King Harris wasn't being discussed as a troublemaker or a viral personality. He was being discussed as someone who might be at the center of something he didn't fully understand. That's when Jay-Z reportedly stepped in. Not loudly, not publicly, but decisively. One insider summarized it like this. Jay didn't wait, he moved first, because if he doesn't, someone else will, and that someone else doesn't do conversations. That line alone shifted public perception, because it reframed the entire situation. This wasn't about ego anymore. It wasn't about clout. It wasn't even about disrespect alone. It was about timing and containment. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, T.I. was reportedly under immense pressure, not just from Jay-Z's message, but from what it represented. Because for the first time, the situation wasn't something he could control internally. It had outgrown him. And that's what terrified people the most. Not conflict itself, but loss of control over it. Then another leak hit. A private industry message allegedly confirmed that Jay-Z's involvement wasn't optional. It read, "If Tip doesn't bring him, the meeting doesn't matter." That one line completely reframed the situation again. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about discussion. It was about presence. King Harris wasn't an observer in this anymore. He was the focal point, the reason the room existed. And that's when panic started spreading online in a different way. People stopped joking, stopped memeing, stopped treating it like entertainment, because a new fear emerged. What happens if he doesn't go? A second message made that fear worse. I can't protect him if he's not in the room. That sentence hit harder than anything else in the entire timeline. Protect him from what? That question never got answered, and the silence around it made it heavier. At that point, the internet split into three groups. One believed Jay-Z was intervening to prevent escalation. One believed it was a disciplinary correction at the highest level of hip-hop culture. And one believed something else entirely, that forces beyond music were now indirectly involved, and Jay-Z was trying to prevent consequences from reaching someone too young to understand them. None of the theories could be confirmed, but all of them felt possible. Then, just when things couldn't escalate further, another leak surfaced. A blurry image of an empty chair inside a private room. 3 glasses of water on a table, and one seat left open, with a label next to it, King Harris. That image spread faster than anything else, because it didn't show conflict. It showed anticipation. It showed inevitability. It showed a moment that hadn't happened yet, but was already shaping everything around it. Then 50 Cent posted something brief. No humor, no trolling, no sarcasm, just a video, a still frame of a serious expression, and a caption. The boy started something he don't understand, but now the right people are in it. That was the first time 50 Cent publicly stepped back. And that alone told people everything. Because 50 Cent doesn't usually step back, unless something bigger steps in. Now all attention turned to Jay-Z. Not as an artist, not as a businessman, but as a stabilizing force. The one person in the room who rarely speaks, but always shifts outcomes when he does. And that's what made the final hours before the meeting feel so heavy. No leaks, no confirmations, no updates, just silence, then fear, then speculation, then waiting. Because everyone understood one thing. Whatever happens inside that room will not stay inside that room. It will ripple outward, into families, into reputations, into careers, into the culture itself. And at the center of it all, a teenager who went from live stream confidence to becoming the most talked about name in hip-hop overnight. Whether this becomes a lesson, a warning, or a turning point, nobody knows yet. But one thing is certain. When that door closes and those 4 names sit in the same space, the conversation won't just be about respect anymore. It will be about consequences. And the moment that conversation ends, hip-hop will not look the same again.